Hi, how's it going? This is Bryson of Collinwood for YouTube, back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. Oh my goodness. So, I'm here to do my character retrospective of Quentin Collins from the movie Night of Dark Shadows. Not only am I doing uh, episode reviews of the original series, I am doing character retrospectives from all three Dark Shadows movies. I covered House entirely. If you want to check that out, I think I have a playlist on I'll leave that in the description box. This is my beginning of my Night of Dark Shadows character retrospectives. Um, this movie was made after the series had ended in 71. You have David Selby, who plays Quentin Collins, Grayson Hall plays Carletta Drake, Kate Jackson, who plays Tracy Collins, Laura Parker plays Angelique Collins. John Carlin plays Alex Jenkins. Nancy Burt plays his wife Claire Jenkins. Lucky him. Jim Storr plays Gerard Stiles. Um, Thayer David plays Reverend Strake. Christopher Pennock plays Gabriel Collins, not in a wheelchair this time. Um, Dana Malay plays Laura Collins. Now, to be fair, because the series had ended, Christopher Pennock did play a Gabriel Collins who wasn't in a wheelchair in parallel time, in 1841 parallel time. Dana Malay plays Laura Collins. Sorry if I already mentioned that. Monica Rich plays Sarah Castle. She plays the little girl, um, the young girl who Angela gives her necklace to. Clarice Black plays Mrs. Castle in this movie. Captain Haggerty plays bad or sorry bald henchman uncredited, and Robert Sinner plays henchman uncredited. So that's her full cast list. Now I'm gonna get into the main characters of this movie. So and I'm gonna do David Selby's Quentin Collins first. Is this Quentin Collins similar to any of the Collins adaptations that we got in the series? Yes, to a degree. It's a mix between 1970 parallel time Quentin and 1841 parallel time Quentin. There's a lot of yin and yang in this movie of good and bad, and good and bad, and really good and bad. David Selby sells his ever loving ass off in this movie, as he always does. So, um, what do I mean by there's a mixture? Okay, so to explain, because I try to do my best to explain where the similarities of the movie and series ends and begins. It's a little more difficult with Night, and I love Night of Dark Shadows as a movie. It's a great movie. It's a fun watch. Has a lot of great psychology. But this movie can be difficult to explain even from a character retrospective standpoint, but I will do my best. So, what I mean by there's similarity here, a little more similarity with this than there was so much House. It's because really David Selby played a lot of iterations of Quentin. We had 1897 Quentin. We had 1970 Quentin, who was still a werewolf, but he still had his portrait, so he didn't change. We had 1970 parallel Tom Quentin, and we had 1841 parallel Tom Quentin. So we've had four versions. Also, there was 1840 Quentin. So there are five versions before this movie. Five versions of Quentin Collins, and no, I'm not kidding. They're literally you could make the case that 1897 and 1970 are the same one, and you wouldn't be wrong. Um, though there's a time difference with this. With this Quentin Collins, this is not the 1897 Quentin. This is not the 1970 regular Count Quentin. What I mean by this is the 18, you know, this is the 1970 parallel time and 1841 parallel time Quentin is. Do you get a mixture of that Quentin with this? But you also get the turned up version of those characters in this movie. So to sort of start my explanation, and again, I'm going to get into the movie as well. Uh, David Selby's Quentin Collins. We They start this movie by driving up to uh, Collinwood, and yes, we are back at the Lyndhurst estate. This movie was filmed in the same exact location the original, the first Dark Shadows movie was, House of Dark Shadows. This was filmed at the Lyndhurst estate as well and on its grounds. Um, you actually get the pool with water in this movie. But we're driving up to the house. That's how this movie starts. You start off by driving up to the house, and you hear Kate Jackson's Tracy Collins say, "I can't believe it's Collinwood." Um, that's what's interesting. This is sort of where the similarities and differences. You really have to be careful here, and by that I mean, in my previous retrospectives of House, I talked about the characters I was retrospecting interacted with. I'm going to do the same thing here. So if I lose you, I apologize. I hope not to. I hope not to lose myself in this retrospective because it's not going to be short. Um, so here's where the similarities begin and end. Okay, David Selby's Quentin Collins in this movie is married to Kate Jackson's Tracy Collins. And Kate Jackson, yes, was from the series, but she did not play a Tracy Collins. And you might say, is that really big of a difference? Yes, it is, because trust me, just the character she played in the series was not Tracy Collins. You have to take my word for it. Um, Now in the series, David Selby's Quentin Collins, when he when his character Quentin Collins comes back to Collinwood in the series, um, keep in mind that he's not married to Kate Jackson's Tracy Collins. He's married to Catherine Lee Scott's Maggie Evans. And there is a big difference between Kate Jackson's character and Catherine Lee Scott's character. Um, the biggest, and again, I'm not trying to do character retrospective on Kate Jackson's character, um, so I'll leave that there. I just want you to know there is a difference because it involves David Selby's Quentin Collins. So David Selby's Quentin Collins and his new wife Tracy, his wife Tracy, move into Collinwood. Um, no other family member is living there. Quentin got it as an inheritance because there's nobody left alive to claim it. You could make the case that this is a sequel to House, if you'd like. If you don't, then that's fine. Either way, um, you could look at it either way. So, are there people living in this house? Yes. There are servants like Grayson Hall's Carletta Drake, Jim Stormstrard Styles. Um, so there are those characters. Um, uh, you also have that this house, the way this house is sort of used in this movie, it's more used as a character. The house and the estate itself are more used as characters, more so in this movie than in the previous movie, House of Dark Shadows. And that's something I'll get into when I do my next character retrospective, which will be about the house. But back to David Selby's Quentin Collins. So he's married to Tracy Jack, or sorry, Kate Jackson's Tracy Collins. There's no Catherine Lee Scott here. There's no Maggie Evans. So David Selby's Quentin Collins in this movie is a painter. And you might say, well, was he a painter in the series? No. There's where the key differences really start. None of the Quentin Collinses were painters. They were all upset. A lot of them, I think all of them, had obsessions with the occult. With this Quentin Collins, I want to say this very carefully. The movie never really makes it clear or unclear whether David Selby's Quentin is obsessed with the occult or not. Now, I will say he could be. Again, because John Carlin's Alex Jenkins is somewhat, in you know, talks about occult stuff in this movie too. So it's hard to sort of distinguish whether Quentin's obsessed with the occult. You could say he might have looked up the occult. You might have say he could have read about it, but reading about it doesn't make you obsessed about it. You can read about anything. Um, so I don't feel the movie distinguishes. It's more up to you whether you feel Quentin's obsessed with the occult or not. This movie, um, I don't feel he is, but I do feel what he's more obsessed with is, how do I put this? Ghost. More so the paranormal than the actual occult. That because what Night of Dark Shadows really gets into is number one, ghost, possession, art, um, and the power of art. Does can the biggest you could say, does it get into Dorian Gray a bit here? Kind of, but it doesn't exactly get into Dorian Gray. It doesn't. Again, Night of Dark Shadows is a very tricky movie. So with Quentin, and I want to stick to this here, with Quentin Collins in this movie has the same memories as his ancestor, one Charles Collins, who was also a painter. And yeah, they are sort of taking the name Charles from Charles Delaware Tate, who was in the series. Charles Delaware Tate sort of was a or not sort of, he was a character when he painted something. If he painted something, it came to life. If he painted the person, that person came to life. So he was more of a Dorian Gray type of character who could bring things to life, if you will, by painting them, helping trap a person's soul or essence. Patofi gave him this ability, and Patofi also found it fascinating. So, um, with this, with this movie, is it clear that Charles Collins or Quentin can bring a painting literal to life? No, the movie really never to me makes it clear, despite Laura Parker's line of "bring the painting to life, Charles," because you can interpret that a lot of ways. You can interpret that a couple ways. One, because he paints a picture of Kate Jackson's character life. He paints a picture uh, of him carrying, uh, Charles does, Kate Jackson's character lifeless body in her arms and presenting it to Angelique, like a trophy almost. She could just mean literally of, make this painting a reality. By that I mean actually kill Kate Jackson's character, Tracy or whoever. Um, so there is that. With Could it mean to actually bring a portrait to life? I will say that because the movie gets into witchcraft as well, the movie itself with Quentin, is there power in his portrait? I don't believe so. I do think because how do I put this correctly? Because there's a lot of things that are going on in Night that I don't want to misconstrue. David Collins, or sorry, David Collins, Quentin, David Selby's Quentin Collins. Yeah, David Collins. David Hedison. No, David Selby's Quentin Collins. I tend to goof up with names, so I apologize. David Selby's Quentin Collins is supposed to be in every way, shape, and form the reincarnation of Charles Collins. He isn't exactly the reincarnation. There's certain marks he doesn't have. He doesn't have the scar right by his eye. I mean, that's going to come later. But from a psychological standpoint, from a memory standpoint, he does have the moment he comes to this house, even before he steps foot in it, um, he seems to have the memories of Charles Collins. Now, and I can't wait to do the character retrospective of the house to hopefully tomorrow. But ever since he's come here, he's had these memories, and he's having trouble distinguishing what's real and what's not real. Basically, he's wondering, wait, is what I'm seeing real? Because he sees a woman hanging from a tree. He keeps having memories of Thera David's Reverend Strake hanging Angelique as a witch. He has memories of Charles Collins trampling Reverend Strake with his horse. This is all happening to one Quentin Collins within this house. And by the way, there are things happening to other people too. So, and I don't want to get into other characters too much because this is Quentin Collins' retrospective, not anybody else's. Again, I try to do everybody individually. And so he keeps having these memories that he feels don't belong to him until he speaks to Carletta Drake, and she says about, she basically tries to please him by, yeah, whatever you want to do, but I think the tower was your best work. And finally, David Selby's Quentin Collins loses it on her. He grabs her. He's like, is it real? Is she real? What's going on here? Is what he wants to know. And she tells him, Carletta Drake, Grayson Hall's character, great character. Can't wait to get into the character retrospective of Carletta. It's not necessarily going to be as long as Quentin's, but it's going to be a nice retrospective. What she tells him is that he has the memory that he and her have the memories of people who used to live here. Obviously, Quentin Collins has the memory of his ancestor, Charles Collins. There's a lot of questions in Night. Questions like, is it the house? Is it Angelique? What's causing the memories? The memories did seem to happen as soon as Quentin showed up here. And again, I can't wait to get into the house retrospective because again, like I said, the house is as much of a character as any of the characters in this movie. Quentin keeps going, though Quentin does come down from the tower initially, he does just go ahead and go back up. Because as he realizes, hey, my paintings were better up there. But he's also giving in to the idea of Quentin Collins, in a lot of ways, though this movie is about reincarnation, more heavily than the previous Dark Shadows movie. I would say Quentin Collins is trying to find out who who more he really is. Am I Quentin or am I Charles at times? He's trying to find out why this matters too. Like what's the deal here? This is his home. This is him and his wife's home, and he doesn't want to leave. And Carlotta tells him, "Well, you could just leave." He tells she probably tells the same thing to Tracy. Um, Neither want to leave. Neither actually want to leave um, the house. You would think they would, but they don't. Until Quentin Collins' character, and I don't say this to offend anybody, so I'm sorry if I do. Night of Dark Shadows really gets into domestic abuse. Um, Now, to be fair, so did 1970 Parallel Time. What's the difference? Obviously, the difference with a movie and a series is you're going to get away more with a movie than you are a series. You can you can show some domestic abuse. You can show somebody grabbing somebody and being physical with them, and sometimes you'll see a smack on a soap opera for shock value. With here, you don't just see with Night of Dark Shadows. You don't just see a smack. You see full. You see Quentin Collins, David Selby's character, grabbing Kate Jackson's Tracy Collins in bed, holding her down, forcing her down. I mean, it's very, very surreal and very shocking. Night of Dark Shadows deals in one of the most psychological terrors and reality terrors of life, and that is, like I said, domestic abuse. Because what you're having happen here is David Selby's Quentin Collins is slowly but surely becoming Charles Collins. That's what's really happening to put it shortly in this retrospective. That's what's going on. Quentin Collins is ceasing to be Quentin Collins, David Selby's character is, and he's becoming slowly, but not so much slowly at times, but he's becoming Charles Collins. He's becoming this violent figure who wants revenge on the people who took his Angelique away from him, and anything, not just so much revenge on them because a lot of them are dead, but he was Charles Collins wants Angelique Collins back, and he'll do. Charles Collins is somebody who would do anything to get that to happen. Think think Dirk Wilkins, but turned up to 100 degrees or no pun intended there with the fire reference, with the degree reference. That Charles Collins will now Dirk Wilkins kills too, but Quentin Collins, who is becoming Charles Collins, Charles will literally kill Tracy, Kate Jackson's character, to get Angelique to come back. He will do anything. Now, there are things that are cut from this movie that I've never seen. As my buddy Mark Gilman has pointed out to me, I believe a seance was cut. Again, I want to say this by saying Night of Dark Shadows, though there is a movie out there you can go watch. In a lot of ways, Night of Dark Shadows is not a completed film. There are a lot of things cut. There are things cut from it that would make the movie make a lot more sense. But from a I here's why I give this cast a lot more credit than I do House. I'm not taking anything away from House. I'm giving Night of Dark Shadows its long overdue flowers it deserves. David Selby, Grayson Hall, Kate Jackson, Laura Parker, John Carlin, Nancy Barrett, Jim Storm, Thayer David, Christopher Pennock, Dana White, all deserve a fucking Oscar because they all do a great job of building the intensity of this movie along with the house itself. And again, I can't wait to get into that character retrospective because you'll really you'll for those who have never seen this movie, it'll help you understand why I say the house is more so a character in this movie. Here, the characters are all experiencing things in and around the house of Collinwood, whether it's the estate, whether it's the guest house. The people who are here are experiencing ghostly a ghostly apparition. They're seeing a woman walk around in white. By the way, that woman is the late lovely Laura Parker, Angelique Collins, who was a witch, and she's playing a witch in this movie. Um, Laura Parker has very few lines in this movie. I do want to say that. Um, some people are going to tell me not to bother with a character retrospective. I am going to do a character retrospective on Angelique Collins because there is something I got to get to on that. Um, with David Selby's Quentin Collins, though, again, I've talked about so he not only holds Tracy down, uh, Quentin, who's becoming Charles, he also tries to drown her in the pool. Uh, and who is your real protagonist in this episode? Or sorry, in this movie, your real protagonist is actually John Garland's Alex Jenkins. And I again, I don't want to get too much into it because he's going to get his own retrospective. But trust me when I say this, John Carlin is more the hero in this movie than anyone else. Well, him and Nancy Barrett, really. So John and Nancy are more your protagonists in this movie, more so than David Selby's Quentin is. You might say, is Quentin a victim? Quentin starts off a victim, and I want to make this really clear because I love David Selby's performance in this movie. It's really good. It's really jarring. It's raw. It's gritty. By the Kate Jackson, same thing. When I get into her character retrospective, Tracy Collins, and I'm almost done here, so I apologize for the length. What really, when you're watching the movie Night of Dark Shadows, and this is a movie I would say you sort of need to watch to understand the psychology of it. You have a house that is in every way a large beacon of supernatural event here, one specific event. And the people in that event not only haunt its halls and haunt its uh, grounds, they haunt and possess the people living there. Most most people who are susceptible to that kind of possession, the sort of I don't want to say weak minded because I don't think David Selby's Quentin is weak minded. I think, if anything, because of being a painter and seeing art the way he does, he's more. That's sort of what more makes him susceptible to the possession angle that goes on in this movie. That it's his, because he's a painter just like his ancestor Charles Collins was, where Charles Collins sort of saw the beauty and irony of life and death, so does David Selby's Quentin Collins. David Selby's Quentin Collins sees art, life, death, all in the same vein. And, when he's asking Carletta, is it real? In many ways, when he's asking that, he already knows the answer. Um, it's more of a formality than when he asked it. In my opinion, if you disagree, please do. That David Selby's Quentin Collins is, because he's seen a woman hanging by a tree. He can feel the very presence within this house, and he definitely feels a presence in that tower room where he's painting. He he's coming to the realization there's no escaping this presence. You know, whatever's here, whether in the house, on the grounds, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and he's becoming susceptible to it because of his chosen profession, a painter. He is. You could make the case that in every way, David Selby's Quentin Collins may have never really been Quentin Collins. He may have always been subconsciously Charles Collins. Now, I'm not saying he was, but I'm saying you could make that case. Um, Sorry for the whole psychological example. I know people are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. You can, but it's just how I view this movie. That there are things you could weigh with this movie more so than you could House, because this movie, Night of Dark Shadows, deals yes, it deals in domestic abuse, but it also deals with the psychology of possession, of reincarnation, and what those two things really entail. It asks, it's not afraid to ask, who are you really? And really, that's another beautiful sort of art form of this movie. That who are any of us? That you know, if you're born looking like somebody, but you're not born with this, and you're born not born with necessarily with the same name as somebody, but you have the same look, a similar look to somebody, or close enough look to one of your relatives, and you choose that same profession. Well, what made you choose that profession? Was it fate? Was it design? Was it just something you chose because you really loved art? But here's the thing: why did Charles Collins choose that profession? Understand? Again, it's a really fun movie to watch. I give it a solid 10. Um, David Selby's Quentin Collins, to sort of play spoiler alert, um, yes, does become Charles Collins in every way. He gets a scar from a fight sequence with Jim Storm's character, Gerard Stiles. By the way, Jim Storm's character in this movie is really, really good. Really entertaining to watch. I love the car chase sequence in this movie. It's a fun sequence. Also, again, you get a lot of possession. You get, Laura Parker being very seductive in this movie. Uh, Kate, also Kate Jackson is more your protagonist too in this movie than what David Selby's Quentin Collins is. Again, he starts off as a protagonist, but he is slowly losing that tag by just not getting up and leaving. And that's, by the way, that's another difference I wanted to point out too before I go. That I talked about how where he's okay. Charles Collins is more taken from the 1970 parallel Tom Quentin a bit, a mixture of Charles Delaware Tate and the 1970 parallel Tom Quentin. The Quentin you see arrive with Kate Jackson's Tracy Collins is more your 1970 Quentin Collins. He's not this playboy billionaire philanderer. He's not this playboy who sleeps with hookers and prostitutes in town, like the 1897 Quentin. He's not a party animal, the way 1897 Quentin Collins was. Um, in my opinion, I want to stress that he's he's a character who's more sort of two characters put together, but is also turned up 110 degrees in every way. That this character, Quentin, there's a lot of things you could ask. There's a lot of things you could debate. Okay, was before coming to this house, was Quentin Collins ever really Quentin Collins? Now, my answer is yes. But if your answer is no, I can't say you're wrong. Um, because again, this movie does deal in deep psychology. It also deals in art. Uh, It deals in possession and reincarnation. All those things. There's all those things in the course of this movie that this movie is getting into in a lot of ways and in every way. Um, is the house and grounds haunted and possessed themselves? Sure, because they're you can feel as you're coming up to the house, you hear that music, though it's relaxing, you can sort of feel this ominous presence, because what they do with the cameras is they make you feel as is the house is all seen, as it, that the eyes are the it feels like the windows of the house are literal eyes. That Angelique's presence isn't just through the house, it's through the entire grounds. Again, it what makes the locations characters themselves. So again, I don't want to just get into that here, but and I'm trying not to, so I apologize. But to sort of put a final touches on Quentin here before I go, that he is a bit like 1941 Parallel Time Quentin, to the effect of he's very nice, he's very down to earth. Now the biggest question really that remains sort of unanswered with Night, and this is what makes Night the most fun to watch. Again, it's the question I pose here: was Quentin Collins ever really Quentin Collins? Coming to the house, coming to uh, the Lyndhurst estate, which was Collinwood in this movie. They used the Lyndhurst estate as Collinwood in this movie. Um, I really hope you guys enjoyed this character retrospective. I did not mean to go off on any tangents. I'm sorry if I did. Um, I'm going to have a lot of fun with these. This is a fun movie to discuss. It's a fun movie to watch. It sort of is sad, really, though, too, what happens at the end. Kay Jackson's character does not win. Spoiler alert, right? But this is a must-watch movie in every way. This is a movie you need to go watch from a psychological standpoint, because it is psychologically beautiful. And it's beautifully shot. Dan Curtis, before Burn Offerings, to me, this was going to be Dan Curtis's masterpiece of Dark Shadows movie. Burn Offerings is really really good, but this movie is really really awesome too. Uh, Go check it out if you haven't. This is my first character retrospective from the movie Night of Dark Shadows. David Selby's Quentin Collins. All right, guys. You guys have a great day. I'll see you later.